when he died on the cross, Mary Magdalene did not even realize it, because all she could see were tears streaming down her eyes. But then, all of a sudden, she heard a noise of people moving around. She lifted her head and she saw they were taking his body down the cross. And in that very moment, she saw something that she would not forget until the day of her own death. She saw his mother, that up to that very moment had been standing on a side, and now had come forward right at the foot of the cross. And in the very moment his body would have touched the ground, she had knelt in front of the cross, opening her arms like that, as every mother would when she's about to hold her newborn baby. But she hugged and loved a lifeless body. And Mary Magdalene went into a frenzy of panic. They didn't have a tomb. They didn't have a place to bury him. They would throw his body into a common burial. His body in a common burial. She could not stand this. She felt somebody tapping her shoulder. She turned and she saw a man. She knew him by sight. He was one amongst those who followed them from a distance. He came forward now and he said, "I have a new tomb. I would be happy to offer it to the master." Why was he asking this to her? She looked around, but then she realized he was addressing her because there was nobody else. All their friends had gone. All their friends had run away. And so she replied, "Yes, sure, let's put him there." And the women themselves, they helped Joseph of Arimathea to carry Jesus' body to his new tomb. But when they got there, the Sabbath was starting. The last rays of the sun were disappearing at the horizon, and there wasn't any time to wrap his body into precious fabrics. There wasn't time to anoint him with oil and spices. There wasn't even time for prayers nor for tears. So they decided they would come back early, as soon as the Sabbath was over. They wrapped his body quickly into a white clean sheet, and they placed the body on a stone bench inside the tomb. Then they all together rolled a very heavy stone in front of the entrance of the tomb. Mary of Magdalene went with the other women in the big house of Martha and Mary, two of their friends. They went there to Bethany and they waited for the Sabbath to be over. And in this waiting, they kept talking and thinking. And they talked about their lives, how they had been before, how Jesus changed them. But they daren't talk about the future, because nobody had ever thought about a future without him. At dawn on the third day, the other women fell asleep. But Mary Magdalene could not find peace. She wanted to be alone with him one last time. She wanted to say her farewell, to tell him, "Well then, as you always said, see you in the next life." And this is why, when it was still dark, she gathered the spices and oils they had prepared. And she started walking alone on the path from Bethany to Jerusalem. But when she was halfway, she thought, "There we go. Why am I always like that? even when I arrive there before everyone else, who will move the stone we have put in front of the entrance of the tomb? I shall have to wait like a stupid. Still, she kept on walking. And she climbed all the way up the hill where the tomb was. And when she got there, the sun was rising. And she smelled the flowers, the scent that you can only smell at dawn. And she heard birds singing. And she thought, this is a wonderful garden. This is a place fit for love, not for death. She moved a branch in front of the entrance of the tomb. But all of a sudden she saw that the stone they had rolled in front of the entrance of the tomb had been removed. She rushed inside in a panic, and she touched with her hand the bench where they had laid his body, but she felt nothing, only naked stone. Meanwhile, her eyes got used to the darkness, but they confirmed what her hands were saying. His body was not there anymore. They had taken him away, they had stolen him. Mary of Magdalene rushed out of the tomb. Shouldn't there be 2 soldiers guarding the entrance? Where have they gone? She started running towards town, seeking for help. Now, she had promised herself never to speak with her friends again after what they have done. She had sworn to herself never to look at them in the eyes after they all abandoned him in the moment of need. But where could she go? Mary of Magdalene started running towards town, seeking for help. She arrived in front of the inn, where the 12 disciples were locked in fear. And she started banging at the door. Open the door! Open the door! They have stolen his body! Open the door! They have taken him away! Open the door! And after a short while, Peter and John came out, and they followed her up the hill in disbelief. But when they got there, they had to admit Mary was right. His body was not there anymore. They had stolen him, taken him away. John and Peter rushed back to town, seeking for more help, inquiring with the soldiers, and Mary Magdalene after them. But after a few steps, she stopped. She thought, but what for? It's over anyway. But this is when, all of a sudden, she heard a swish on her left-hand side. And she stood paralyzed in terror. Of course, these are the soldiers. This is an ambush. They have taken the body of Jesus, and now they've come back to arrest us all. But then she looked again and she saw a white tunic. Therefore she changed mind. She tried to calm herself down and she thought, no, this might be the gardener of this place. And if he is the gardener, surely he had been here since dawn. He had seen who has taken the body of Jesus. And he rushed toward the man, addressing him with a flow of words. Sir, if you are the gardener of this place, you have to tell me who have taken the body of... But the man came forward and he addressed her. Maria! And she didn't even look at him in the face, but from the way he said, Maria! As he used to say, joking, Maria, why do you look at me? Maria, what do you want from me? Maria! From the way he named her, Maria, she understood it was him, indeed, it was him alive. And she started hugging him and kissing him, crying and laughing at the same time. But he told her, Maria, what are you doing here? Why don't you go to our friends? Why don't you rush to town to tell them you have seen him? me, why don't you go and tell them I am alive? But she wanted to reply, no, Jesus, I want to spend some time alone with you. I want to ask you 1,000 questions. But instead, she did as he asked her. She ran all the way to town. Down the hill she ran, full of joy. And halfway up she met her friends that were coming up to bury him. And she started shouting, I have seen him! I have seen him! I have seen him with my eyes! I have seen him with these eyes! I have seen him! He's alive! He's risen! He's alive! I have seen him with my eyes! I have seen him! I have seen him with my eyes! And all together they ran downhill to give the good news to the entire world. But in a time and place where the word of the woman was not considered a reliable witness in a court, nobody believed them. But Mary of Magdalene did never give up, and she kept on all days of her life to tell the same story.